All right, now we're going to look at something called Lashon Hara. And many of you have heard about this, but there's always more to learn. In fact, some of you have read that book, Desiring Life by Chofetz Chaim, and I'm looking at some people that have told me that they're reading this. I have not read the book because I don't want to. Now, someday I will, when I'm more mature. But honestly, that would be such a challenging book to read. I just haven't started it yet. But still, we're going to touch on, because you can only take so much, right? You can only take so much at once. So Lashon Hara literally means the evil tongue. And this is what, when Pastor first talked about this is what really struck me. We know that slander and libel are bad. To lie about people is bad. Lashon Hara includes that, but adds telling the truth about people is bad under many circumstances. And it comes from, before we jump more into that, we'll talk about Numbers 12. This is the last chapter of the Torah portion. And starting in verse 1 to 3, and Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married. For he had married an Ethiopian woman. And they said, hath the Lord indeed spoken only by Moses? Hath he not spoken also by us? And the Lord heard it. Now the man Moses was very meek, above all the men which were upon the face of the earth. And that's interesting that, who wrote Torah? Moses. So Moses just wrote that he's the most humble man on the earth. So first about that, this is a little side trip, but would it be wrong for Moses to write that? What if God told Moses to write that? So we think of humility, for example, this is how we think of humility. Let's say I painted an incredibly beautiful painting. And then you said to me, Peter, that painting is incredibly beautiful. And I said, that old thing, I just, if I did that, we think that's humble, right? People think that's humility. This is from C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity, Chronicles of Narnia. He said, that's false humility. That's a lie. If you can be humble and tell the truth. I can say, thank you. It is incredibly beautiful. Thank you very much. And it's true. And you can still be humble and say that. So Moses said that he's the most humble man on earth, and he was. And it wasn't not humble for him to say that. So now what else is going on in here is our normal understanding of this is that Miriam and Aaron are complaining about Moses. He claims to be this prophet, and we're prophets too. What's so special about him? And besides, he's married a black woman. What the heck is up with that? And that's the kind of traditional understanding. Another explanation for it is from Ramban. This is another sage from about 800 years ago. And he says, this is the real reason for Miriam's slander to Aaron about Moses. So, at Sinai, when they were going to receive Torah, God told Moses to tell the people to sanctify themselves for the third day. So they had to refrain from marital relations, they had to wash, they had to change their clothes and be ready for that day. And in this chapter 11, when they're going to get the meat, God tells them to sanctify themselves. And you can assume those same things are implied. Moses would have to do that anytime he's going to meet with God. But the problem is he never knew when he was going to meet with God. It could be any time. So he continuously refrained from relations. This came out, according to Jewish tradition, with a chance conversation, a chance comment made by Zipporah to Miriam. And Miriam is taking offense. She says, hey, she's trying to defend Zipporah. And she says, look, Aaron and I are also prophets, and we're not doing that. What makes you so different? Why are you neglecting your wife? And so that's the Jewish understanding of what Miriam's slander is. And it had harsh consequences for her. And you know that from this she gets leprosy, and leprosy isn't what we think of today as leprosy, but her skin turned white and she had to leave the camp for 7 days. So this takes us back to what Lashon Hara is and why we need to avoid it. Keep in mind, she was trying to say something, she was trying to defend another person, okay? And she got this huge judgment. So the expression comes from Psalm 34, verses 12 to 13. What man is he that desireth life and loveth many days, that he may see good? Keep thy tongue from evil and thy lips from speaking guile. So that's where the title of the book, Desiring Life, comes from, and where the expression Lashon Hara, that keep your tongue from evil, comes from. So here are some rules to avoid Lashon Hara. It is forbidden to speak negatively about someone else, even if it's true. I used to think it was okay. If it's true, it's okay to say it, but it's not, okay? It is also forbidden to repeat anything about another, even if it's not negative. It's also forbidden to listen to Lashon Hara. One should either reprimand the speaker or remove oneself from that situation. That's hard to do, right? If someone starts talking bad about somebody else, that's hard to reprimand. I've been thinking about that. How could you say that? I guess you could say, excuse me, I don't want to listen to evil speech. Maybe you could say that. That's still pretty harsh. But, or you could just say, excuse me, I can't listen to this, you know. Or you can remove yourself from the situation. Even if you have already heard the Lashon Hara, it's forbidden to believe it. Nevertheless, one may suspect that the Lashon Hara is true and take necessary precautions. So if someone tells you, hey, so-and-so, you know, he's a violent person and he likes to hurt people, be careful. Well, you're not allowed to believe it, but you can still not get this person angry when you're private, you know, where you could get hurt. You can take precautions. One may not retell a negative event without names if the listeners might be able to figure out who is being spoken of. I live in a small community. I always lived in cities my whole life. And I moved to a small community about 25 years ago. And I was telling somebody, it's 12,000 people, so I didn't think it was that small, but I was telling somebody a story, and he said, yeah, and he was driving a blue pickup truck down West Side Highway. He goes, oh, I know who that is. I couldn't believe it. And I've seen it over and over again. Just 2 identifiers, and someone's going to know out of 12,000 people who you're talking about. So you have to leave specifics out. And you can't even talk about it if someone might be able to figure out who you're talking about. In certain circumstances, for example, to protect someone from harm, it is permissible or even obligatory to share negative information. So the author of the book had a son-in-law who was famous. I'm talking about Chofetz Chaim. He had a son-in-law who was even more famous for never talking. And his father-in-law said to him, sometimes you have to. Sometimes you have to speak up. So it's not there are times when you can say something negative. But think about it. Just how hard is it just to keep these? I've been working on the first one for about 3 years now. You know,